Okay, so this is going to be a variant on my previous video of the crushing hand build, the build I like to call the bitch slap build. This is a Starless Skies variant. I know that on Max Roll and Icy Veins and a lot of the other guides that are out there, everybody is only using two specific mythics and doing an overpower build with this. And so the two mythics that most everybody's using is the Harlequin Crest in combination with the Shroud of False Death. Then for their rings, they're typically using a nice legendary, ancestral legendary ring with all the right rolls on it and then using the unyielding hits on it. I'm not doing that. I was doing that, but I felt like once I got into the 95-200 range of the pit that I kind of hit like this plateau. I could get through the primary area of the pit and I would have at least 8 to 9 minutes remaining to go defeat the boss, but it was at the boss where things started going down. Now, at that time, I also did not have all of my glyphs elevated to their highest levels that they could possibly be or anything, so maybe that was part of the problem, but I also couldn't get the glyphs to where they needed to be because you got to be at least 10 higher in order to get a guaranteed glyph upgrade, right? You got to be 10 levels higher in the pit than what you are for a glyph itself, very, very similar to upgrading gems and whatnot in D3. But it just, I didn't want to power creep. I didn't want to sit there and, okay, my glyph is at level 85, but I can only run level 90, and I got to run it 4, 5, 6 times in a row just to get the hopes of an upgrade on the glyph. So I kind of started changing some things up. Actually, one of the first things I changed up was the glyphs themselves. I went through all my glyphs, started looking at them, and I'm like, is this a glyph that I really want to use? Is it a glyph that I don't want to use? So I had two glyphs that I kind of felt like they were very, very similar, and I didn't know if it was worth using. And one of them was Colossal. The other one was Turf, right? Colossal's doing increased damage to close enemies, right? So the thing about Colossal is the additional bonus, you get a 2% multiplicative increased damage for each stack of Resolve you have, which I tend to have 24 to 25 stacks, right? So we multiply that by 2, and, you know, we're talking about a 50% damage increase most of the time. And then Turf, well, Turf really only gives you a 10% damage reduction against close enemies. I don't, you know, you deal 10.7% multiplicative increased damage to close enemies, and that's great. But I kind of felt like these two kind of were one and the same. You know, Colossal's triggered off your gorilla skills, and then Turf is just an overall, you know, close targets damaged. And I just didn't like that. I mean, the rest of them, they're all something very specific, right? Increased critical strike damage here, and the critical strike damage generates 3 vigor, which is very, very important to the crushing hand build, because you got to hit that magic number of 275, so it blinks out to 0 and then back up to 275 in no time with 100% generation. And then, you know, outmatch, we need that, right? Because you deal 15% multiplicative increased damage to non-elites and bosses, right? And that's the big thing here. And you get an increase to damage while you're healthy. In which case, with everything else that's going on, we're always going to be healthy. So we're always going to be triggering that 11.3 multiplicative there. You know, we're always going to get our critical strike damage because of the way the overpower build works with the talisman lore, the talisman's amulet, you are always critically striking and overpowering. So Spirit, I was kind of curious whether or not I wanted to use it. I was thinking about maybe taking it off, but again, the critical strikes are what increase the damage that enemies take, and it increases 3% multiplicative for 20 seconds up to 15%. So I was like, well, I'm always critically striking. That's always going to be going. So what's the other benefits of this particular glyph? Well, it's the increased damage to elites, right? So that's something I didn't want to get rid of. So I decided to get rid of Turf, because Turf and Colossal to me are almost one and the same. And it's not that they cancel anything out. They do add the damage or whatever, but I wanted something more. So I started leveling up Exploit, because Exploit could go where the Turf one goes, since they're both strength based for their Paragon points. And the nice thing about Exploit is when you damage an enemy, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds, right? Now, yes, one singular enemy can only become vulnerable for 3 seconds, and that enemy, once those 3 seconds are up, they can't become vulnerable again for another 20 seconds. And that's fine, right? Because it doesn't matter. As soon as they're vulnerable, you're just destroying them and crushing them anyway. Because you get an increased damage to vulnerable targets of 9.7 multiplicative. So we'll take that. I'll take that over Turf, right? And that's what I did. So that was the first thing I did. I changed out my Turf. Now I'm using the Paragon board layout that Maxroll uses. And as you can see, if you were to look at every single one of these boards, I think I've only got the primary board, the second board, and I think that's it, that are actually, everything is exactly the same. The third Paragon board here that we're using, which is the sapping board, it's going to be the same when I'm done with it, but the problem is I do not have all my Paragon points in here that I need. I got enough Paragon points to activate the glyph with a maxed out level 46. And then I went and got all the Paragon points needed to get sapping, and a few of the nodes, the magic nodes here, the extra buff nodes that I needed. Same thing with the fourth node here, or fourth board, right? I got my revealing, but revealing, and another reason why I went with the Exploit, you have a 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, and you deal 30% more damage, 30% multiplicative increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Knockdown is a crowd control. And so the Exploit glyph, it's making them vulnerable. I have a 30% chance then to knock them down, putting on a crowd control, and then get that multiplicative damage to the crowd control, right? So that's why I swapped out specifically with the Exploit, was for the vulnerable abilities compared to Turf. So here, again, I beeline straight for the revealing, and then filled in everything I needed to get my Colossal glyph activated. I don't have all my Paragon points in here. As you can see, I'm only at level 247. So we got 53 more points to earn. And I will be filling in the rest of my boards at that time. I don't even have the final board. I'm trying to beeline over to Drive. Because after you move 10 meters, you're dealing a 3% increased damage, right? For 10 seconds, multiplicative goes up to 10 times. That's 30% damage increase. And with the way the Crushing Hand build works, as long as your Ravager is always going, you're pretty much teleporting from enemy to enemy to enemy all over the place, and you're moving more than 10 meters really quick and easy. So that's always going to be active and buffing everything. But I haven't got there yet. The grind to 300 takes forever. So that's some of the things I changed there on the Paragon side. And that was my initial change before I started messing with equipment, right? So I just felt like I still wasn't going where I needed to be, in the direction I needed to be. This particular ring, I'm not worried about losing my 27.5 resource generation. I know that's a killer amount there. It's tapped out, it's maxed out. You can't really get better than that. Because I have the 275. With this ring or without this ring and using Starless, I get my 275 and it always stays there, right? Because Starless Spending your primary resource reduces the resource cost of your skills and then increases your damage by 10% multiplicative for 3 seconds up to 50%. Always being maxed out. Always hitting that, always getting it. Not to mention it gives me a +4 to skills off the ring, right? This ring over here is not giving me a plus to any skills whatsoever. And so I wanted that +4 to the skills. And while unyielding hits is good, I'm still missing 5% on that one there. It really only increases your weapons damage. Well, I kind of felt like redirected force is a lot better. So I changed things out, took this ring off, put the redirected force on there for the block chance because my blocking is always going to be going. I'm always getting that 70% there. And then I forget exactly what was on the pants originally, but I changed it out to the morass because close enemies or those you deal indirect damage to are slowed, which is a crowd control, right? So that's going to trigger that one board there, the revealing, I believe it is. And then you're dealing 20% increased damage to them, right? Multiplicative, of course. So this layout allowed me to start pumping past the 100 mark, right? And then at that point, I was able to get a lot of my glyphs start getting into the 90s. So I'm not sure why nobody's using the Starless Skies. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. Actually, I think I'm just going to go with a 104 because I've got a couple of these guys that are sitting at 92 and I just want to get a guarantee. So yeah, let's go with a 94 or a 104. And then I'm going to activate, I'm going to go with the resource cost reduction, attack speed. It doesn't really matter which one of these I go with. I'm just getting them for the experience. Same thing with the Chorus of War. I'm just doing it for the experience. So I can try to level up my Paragon boards and get them maxed out. So we'll go through here and we will just kind of crush things. At this point, same as it was in my previous video, I'm holding down 1, 2, and 3. I'm tapping number 4, which is where my hunter attack is, right? So I try to keep him up as much as possible, and then I just kind of teleport onto things. I use Scourge when I can, as soon as it's on refresh, but you get in here and I just start destroying things. This was not possible with my setup the way it was prior to changing to Exploit for one of my glyphs and then changing to Starless Skies. I'm not sure why everybody thinks that leaving the Starless Skies off is beneficial. I don't. You get an automatic attack speed increase on it. You get a damage increase right off the bat. You know, you get resources. It's, if you're struggling with the 275, so if you look at my HUD there, you'll see my 275 is just sitting at 275. I know that there's videos out there where people are saying that you don't necessarily need 275. You need the 275 minus the cost of the attack. And so that takes it somewhere down to like a 250 something or whatever. I disagree with that. I was struggling for a while. My vigor would bounce from 275 to 265, 275 to 265, and I just didn't feel like I was doing the damage I needed to be doing. Once I was able to get it to 275, it made a huge difference. I think there's some sort of glitch too, because I'm sitting here holding down the keys and sometimes he pauses on attacks. He hesitates. I'm not sure what that's all about. Now sometimes you get these increased health guys. All right, we'll just go through them. But I think this particular setup, this build, this way is much, much better than using the turf glyph and the legendary ring with unyielding hits on it. It just didn't seem to be doing the same amount of damage. And when I get to the boss, I stagger them a lot better as well, which allows me to then, of course, take them down, right? So as we can see here, this is just going along nicely. We're at a level 104 on the pit. And I don't really need to go super high on the pit here. I only need to get to 110, 111. That's all that matters. I'm not a pit pusher. I'm not trying to get up into the 150s or any of that junk. I just want to get high enough to get my guaranteed glyph levels, right? So I want to be able to raise my glyphs up to 100. That's the max they go to. So I need to get to a 110 pit or a 111 pit at least, so I can get the guarantee every time. I don't want to have to sit there and power grind it. You know, I don't want to have to sit there and, oh, well, I'm only running level 105, and I hope I get a 50% chance here. Let's hope that the 50% chance upgrades my glyph, because it takes too long. It's a grind, and getting your Paragon boards filled up to 100% where you want them to be in the first place, and getting to level 300 on the Paragon is a grind in and of itself right now. It just takes too long, in my opinion. The experience you're being awarded is just not enough. And if you have opals, run the opals too, because you get the extra experience. I'm all out of opals, so right now, and I don't feel like grinding the Realm Walker because it's boring. The Realm Walker takes way too long to do, following that stupid thing around until you finally get the chance to fucking fight it. Sorry about my cussing, but Realm Walker is just ridiculous. The Realm Walker should be no different than any of the other bosses. You should be fighting just the Realm Walker themselves. They can have increased health, they can have attacks, they could, call on enemies to come in and assist, whatever, but when you're attacking the Realm Walker, you should be attacking the Realm Walker itself, not just sitting there attacking anything it portals in until you get to a certain point. It's ridiculous and boring. Probably one of the worst things about this season. Undercity is nice. I like the Undercity. I got lots of tributes. In fact, that's how I got some of my mythics here. Was I got a few tributes for increased chance to get a mythic, and was able to get some mythics, none of which I kept. I crushed them all because they were junk. They weren't ones that I wanted. It was always that stupid Bardiche polearm, the Vow, and that's absolutely useless to me on this build. So, and I have no interest in doing barbarian builds, so I would just crush it, get my spark, and then once I had enough of the right runes, which was also a pain in the butt to get, a lot of hunting under the Undercity there to get the right runes, as well as trading with some friends who their builds didn't use the exact same runes for what they were trying to craft mythic wise, and I was able to trade because the Bach rune doesn't seem to drop worth a bean. But once I got those and I got where I needed to be, I was able to craft my mythics. I was thinking I should have gone maybe with the Perdition helm, but I went with the Shaco Harlequin Crest because that's what all the other builds are calling for, and I'm just thinking maybe now those builds are decent guides and reference points, but then maybe it's better to just kind of evaluate things on your own based on that too, right? I mean, the guides got me where I needed to be to begin with, but then after that, I've got to start customizing the character more to my play style, how I do things. These extra health guys just kill me. They take forever to kill. Of course, it's also a level 104 too, so it's a fairly high pit level when you compare it to what it is you can max out at. And again, like I said, my Paragon boards aren't even max. I don't have all my points we're getting here, but we're going to build it. Now, I ran this a bit ago using the other ring, and I only had just a few minutes to kill the boss. I wasn't even close to what I'm doing now. I'm going to get the boss, and I still have half the timer left. Come on, Wolf Boy, you're on. There we go. Now see how quickly he got staggered, and then I can just sit here and attack and just start bringing him down. He'll get staggered again, and I'm going to start bringing him down. And this is the Starless Skies doing this. The Starless Skies is causing him to get staggered because of the increased attack speed, the increased damage. Vulnerable doesn't work so much with them because, again, you only get them vulnerable for 3 seconds, and you can't make them vulnerable for another 20 seconds after that. So that's a bit of a bummer, but you're doing enough damage that it doesn't really matter. Your 20 seconds are going to go by fairly quick. And I hate that you have no choice but to go through some of these animations. So there we go. These beat Pit Tier 104. I can complete these when I'm using the other ring. It just takes longer. I think the Starless Skies ring definitely made a huge difference there. And then going with the exploit made a huge difference. Again, the exploit doesn't help me much with the bosses. But the whole thing is I'm trying to get through the primary area of the pit as quickly as possible to give me as much time as possible when fighting the pit boss, right? And definitely having exploit there works better for that, because I kill things a lot quicker, right? I'm killing multiple enemies all at once kind of thing, and a lot faster. And so I like the exploit glyph for that purpose. So now I can come in here, guaranteed. Look at it. Okay. I'm at 12 levels above, right? 92 to 104. That's not just a 10, that's a 12 levels above, and I'm only getting a 90% chance. It seems like that's another problem that Blizzard has here, is it drops off after you get a certain level, right? 93 to 103, 10 levels higher, I should have 100% here, not 90%. That's ridiculous. So it pretty much means that it doesn't matter how high you go in those tiers. Your chance of getting to 100 is going to go down every time. And that's ridiculous. I should have a 100% guaranteed chance for this to go from a 92 to a 93. You know? And yeah, 90% still really, really good, but I've had 90% and it be a fail. And that's frustrating, right? So now they're all at 70%. So one level and I lost a 20% chance. Are you effing kidding me, Blizzard? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So there we go. I know this is a rather long video, you know, but it's a typical Sunday morning around where I live, and I have nothing better going on other than to play and make videos. So there we go. We'll go back in here real quick, right? We've got our Harlequin Crest. We've got our Shroud of False Death. This thing is great. I love when the enemy disappears, or if I can go in to fight a boss and then I can run around for a few seconds real quick and go stealth, because look at that damage. 815% damage on next attack after entering stealth. So if I can get him to go stealth, and you see when he kind of goes into this weird shimmer look, and then do a teleport attack based on Ravager, it's an immediate 815% damage, right? So beautiful, beautiful roll on that. I got lucky when I crafted it. I really, 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 really did. I can't complain there. Typical gloves here, right? It would be better if they were 4GA or something, but these were a +5 to Crushing Hand. A friend of mine gave them to me. I'm in return giving him a +2 Quill Volley for his build when I next see him online. But then I got him maxed out to the basic damage here, so I got really, really lucky there. We're using our Boneweave Folds of Binding Morass, right? Again, +9 to maximum resolve. Like I said, my resolve is always at 24 or 25. Bounces between those two. It would be nice if the morass aspect was the full 70%, but it is what it is, and I don't seem to be finding any more aspect upgrades. I don't know why, but c'est la vie. We got our Yen's blessings here, right, with the maximum 23.4 resource generation. Good movement speed, good resistances. Again, it would be nice if these were a full 60%. So maybe down the road I'll find one that has a 60% on them. But then I'm going to have to upgrade, masterwork it, and hope that I get very similar upgrades to what these have. We got a Rod of Capellici here. Can't complain on this one. I know it's only a 1 GA, and that's fine, but it's a perfect 3% multiplicative increased critical strike damage for each point of vigor that I spend in the manner that it spends it, right? So you couldn't ask for a better one, in my opinion. I'm going to take it. I don't need the +4 to velocity. I wish there was a way to alter that and change it into something else, but since they don't let you do that on uniques, is what it is. We got our perfect ring of the Midnight Sun here, right? It's only a 750 item power, so it'd be nice if it was an 800, but we've got a perfect 50% on the regain of the vigor. So I can't get rid of it. I'm keeping it. We've got our Starless Sky here, right? We've got our +4 to our core skills. We're getting the 10 multiplicative for 50% multiplicative, right? We got a GA on it for the attack speed, so that was really, really nice. We got our +4 to core skills with the master working, so I'll take that. That's nice. I think my core skills are sitting up around like 25 or something. It's ridiculous. We got our Banished Lord's Talisman here with a perfect 60% on it. Can't complain there, right? Attack speed and everything, the overpower damage. It's, I mean, really, really kind of lucked out there. And as we can see, I hate these stupid things. There we go. As we can see here, you know, we're pushing on all of our resistances, so we're good there. I got my armor at over 1,000, so I'm good there because of the bulwark that kicks off of these 2 runes when put together. And because I'm always spending the resources, of course, you know, the Druid bulwark is always going. My critical strike damage, which is what this build uses, it uses critical strike and overpower combination. The critical strike is just crushing it, right? My armor is at the max, right? So we're good. But the big thing here is the vigor generation. Now, I know regeneration is 0 because he does not regenerate. He has to just generate. But my vigor generation is sitting at 68% when I'm not fighting. But when I'm fighting, the Starless Skies kicks in, okay? And this jumps up to something like 114%. I could go up here. Well, I guess he's not going to go very well because this is in my way. Let's get over here. We'll bring that back up again. I got to do something with those ovals. So if I put this ring on, now I'm at 114% vigor generation with that ring, right? So that keeps me going at the 275. But as you saw when I was playing, if you paid attention, my 275 was always at 275. Even with the Starless Skies on there, right? Because it's reducing the cost of my skills. And it helps to increase the generation. Even though it doesn't talk about it, it does. And it boosts the damage overall. So we'll put that back on. So I don't think you necessarily need the 100% like they're saying. I think if you can get it somewhere, your normal vigor generation somewhere in the 60 to 70 range, I think you're going to be just fine, especially if you're using like a Starless Skies, right? So you saw I just did a Pit 104 and I had no problems with it. So that is what I recommend. This is the build that I'm going with. And I'm not having any issues with it. So again, I'm swapping out my One Ring for the Starless Skies. I feel it does better with the damage overall. And then I swapped out the Turf Glyph for the Exploit Glyph, because when the enemy is vulnerable, I feel like I'm doing a lot more damage to them than I am just for them being close, which is all Turf really works off of, is close enemy damage. And I've already got Colossal for that, so I don't need a secondary close. It just didn't seem like it was effective. So I know it was a long video, but I hope if you're watching it, it helps you out in some way, and you're able to progress with your build the way I am progressing with mine. Until next time, later.